It was a calm evening when the sky above Earth suddenly darkened, as if a storm was brewing. People in cities across the world looked up, puzzled. What was happening? The air felt heavier, and a strange hum filled the atmosphere. It started as a flicker of lights, tiny pinpricks of light in the sky. But these lights weren't like any stars people had ever seen before. They moved quickly, effortlessly, almost as if they were alive. At first, no one knew what to think. Governments around the world scrambled to make sense of it. Military. Jets flew into the air trying to track the unknown lights, but they couldn't keep up. The lights grew larger, becoming brilliant beams of blue, purple, and green, weaving across the sky like a dance of energy. People gasped in awe and fear as they stared at the sight, unable to look away. Then it happened. A massive ship, unlike anything anyone had ever seen, descended from the sky. Its surface shimmered, reflecting the stars and clouds around it. It was smooth and sleek, a thing of perfection. The ship was so big it blocked out the sun, casting shadows over entire cities below. The world held its breath, unsure whether it was witnessing the end of humanity or the beginning of something extraordinary. The ship's descent was graceful, almost like a leaf floating down from a tree. As it touched the Earth's surface, a shockwave rippled across the land, but it wasn't destructive. No, it was different, gentle, almost welcoming. People stood in disbelief as the ground beneath them seemed to hum with life. The ship was not here to destroy. It was here to make contact, and then the door of the ship opened. From the massive doorway, beings began to emerge, tall, elegant figures with glowing skin and radiant eyes. The air around them seemed to shimmer, as if they were not quite fully part of this world. They walked with purpose, each step resonating with an aura of power and grace. Their presence was unlike anything human beings had ever experienced before. The crowd remained still, not knowing whether to be afraid or to embrace these otherworldly visitors. These beings were women. The alien females exuded an aura of calm and wisdom, their eyes scanning the crowd below. They didn't speak immediately, but their presence was enough. It was as if the very air changed the moment they stepped onto the earth. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. A soft, melodious voice echoed from the ship, not in any language known to humans, but somehow everyone understood. It was a universal greeting, a peaceful invitation. "We come in peace," the voice said. "We offer knowledge, peace, and a new beginning. Your world is troubled, and we can help." People were stunned. A mix of emotions flooded. The crowd: fear, excitement, curiosity, and hope. No one knew whether to trust these visitors. One thing was certain: their arrival would change everything. The world leaders quickly came together, trying to communicate with the alien females, but there was no need for translators. Spoke directly into their minds. They could understand every word without uttering a single sound. They were offering their help, offering solutions to the world's most pressing issues: disease, famine, war, and environmental destruction. But the more the leaders listened, the more they realized this wasn't just about saving humanity. It was about something much deeper. The women from the alien civilization were offering technology that could revolutionize life on Earth. They had knowledge that could heal the sick, stop hunger, and clean the planet. But the more the leaders heard, the more they sensed there was more to these beings than met the eye. Why had they chosen Earth? Why now? As the days passed, the alien women did not show signs of leaving, began to establish a presence in every major city. Their ships hovered above the skies, not in a threatening way, but as if they were guarding the planet. They started working with human scientists, teaching them new ways of thinking, showing them technologies that could do wonders for the world. They even began healing the planet, planting trees and cleansing the oceans with their advanced technology. But still, the world watched with suspicion. Why were they doing this? What did they want in return? The answer came slowly as men, in particular, began to experience the benefits of this technology. They began to feel stronger, smarter, and more capable. It was as though a hidden power had been unlocked inside of them, They felt unstoppable, like they could achieve anything. But why was it only the men who felt this way? Why didn't the women experience the same changes? The alien women's presence was calming, but there was an underlying tension. Men, now empowered, began to dominate in the decision-making processes. They were growing stronger every day, and the world seemed to be shifting in their favor. There was something about the aliens. Intervention that felt ... off. What had they truly come to Earth for? As the days passed, the question began to burn in the minds of many. Were they here to help, or were they here to change the world forever? One thing was certain. The arrival of the alien civilization was just the beginning of a new era, and no one could predict what would happen next. As the days unfolded after the alien female's arrival, humanity's awe quickly transformed into curiosity. The world had barely processed the fact that beings from another civilization were among them, when the true marvel of their presence began to reveal itself. The alien women, who seemed like ethereal figures, soon showed their true power not through weapons, but through knowledge. They brought with them gifts that were beyond human imagination, promising to solve Earth's most pressing problems. The first of their gifts came in the form of technology. It wasn't like anything humans had ever seen. The aliens demonstrated machines that could heal the sick in mere seconds, devices that could generate limitless clean energy, and tools that could reverse environmental damage. The world's scientists stood in awe, unable to fully comprehend the power of what they were being shown. These were not just machines. They were intelligent entities in their own right, designed with an understanding of the universe far beyond anything Earth had achieved. The alien women didn't just give these technologies to governments or corporations, they spread them across the globe, allowing common people to experience their power. Hospitals were the first to benefit. People with terminal illnesses were healed. Blindness was cured, and crippling diseases vanished without a trace. Hospitals, once overcrowded and overwhelmed with suffering, became places of hope. The aliens made it clear that their gift was for everyone. It's not just the rich or the powerful, but the most stunning of their gifts came for men. At first, it was subtle. Men who interacted with the alien technology began to feel different. They felt more alive, more energetic, as if something deep within them had been awakened. It wasn't just physical strength. It was a mental clarity, a newfound ability to focus, learn, and create with ease. Men began to accomplish tasks that had previously been beyond their capabilities. Some even began to experience what felt like bursts of inspiration, as though their minds had expanded beyond normal human limits. As the changes became more pronounced, the world began to notice the shift. Men were growing faster, stronger, and smarter, while the women of Earth, although grateful for the technology, did not experience the same dramatic changes. In fact, the alien women seemed to avoid the women of Earth, offering them little beyond the technology to improve their environment, healing the land, purifying the air, and enhancing crops to end hunger. But even this wasn't without its oddities. Men felt a pull towards the alien women, an undeniable attraction. They were drawn to them not just by their beauty or power, but by something deeper, something that couldn't be easily explained. It was as though the alien women were part of the transformation, and the men felt they were becoming something more than humans, something extraordinary. One evening, during a televised address, the leader of the alien women stood before a vast audience. Her voice, like the others, echoed not through the air but directly into the minds of those watching. "We did not come to Earth to take control, came to help you. But only those with the strength to accept the truth will fully understand our gift." Her words left a chill in the air. While humanity had seen the benefits, there was something in the way she spoke that left a lingering question. What was the true purpose of this gift? The more the men used the technology, the stronger they became. Governments, now under male leadership, made decisions with the confidence and intelligence granted by the aliens' gifts. New industries were born almost overnight, powered by alien technology. The economy boomed, and cities flourished in ways that had once been thought impossible. The world seemed to be on the brink of a new golden age, yet even as the men basked In their newfound power, a growing unease began to spread. What did the alien women want in return? Why had they given so much to Earth without asking for anything in return? It wasn't long before whispers started. The women of Earth who had not received the same physical transformation began to feel forgotten, as if they were being pushed aside. Some began to question if the aliens had come with a hidden agenda that only the men could see. A few outspoken women, including prominent leaders and activists, began to ask harder questions. Why only the men? Why is this change so specific? What do they want from us? These questions rippled through the global consciousness, as even the most optimistic began to feel a gnawing sense of doubt. Despite the whispers, the men's transformation continued at an accelerated pace. They began to display abilities that seemed to defy human limits. Some could read and understand complex formulas and theories in mere moments. Others developed physical strength beyond the bounds of human capability. Some even began to show signs of telepathy when interacting with each other, further deepening the rift between the sexes. The alien women, while still silent on their true intentions, continued to quietly observe their powerful ships hovering above the Earth, watching over the transformed men. It was clear that they had not come to Earth by accident. They had a purpose, a plan, and they were waiting for the right moment to reveal it. The tension between the men and women grew, with the latter feeling increasingly left behind in this new world where only the men seemed to thrive. Was this new world really a paradise for all, or was it just a beautiful illusion meant to draw attention away from the larger scheme at play? As the weeks passed, the transformation of the Earth was undeniable. The cities began to sparkle with new technologies. Vast green fields that once lay barren now thrived under the alien women's gift. The world was on the verge of something extraordinary. And yet, something dark lingered beneath the surface. It wasn't just the cities that had changed. The very fabric of society was being rewoven. Men, once ordinary, now held positions of power, authority, and influence in ways no one had ever imagined. They made decisions that affected the world, decisions that were swift, bold, and almost always for the better. The technology they had received amplified their leadership abilities, giving them new depths of understanding, empathy, and reasoning. It was as though the aliens had granted them a new kind of wisdom, one that allowed them to see beyond the small-minded divisions that had plagued humanity for centuries. But as the men flourished, something strange began to happen. The women of Earth, who had once stood beside their male counterparts, now found themselves on the outside looking in. The new world order had been set. It was clear that men had taken the lead, not just in the physical world, but in the very psyche of humanity. The alien gifts, seemingly given freely, had created a world where men were empowered to shape the future. And while the world's leaders, almost all men, were forging ahead with plans for global prosperity, the women's voices grew quieter. At first, the women remained passive, grateful for the healing powers the aliens had provided, for the new food technologies that ended hunger, for the cleansing of polluted waters. But as the weeks went on, resentment began to creep in. Why weren't they receiving the same gifts? Why was it that only the men seemed to benefit from the alien technology in such profound ways? Women began to notice that their lives were not changing in the same way. While their surroundings were improving, healthier air, cleaner water, more sustainable resources, nothing in their bodies or minds seemed to evolve as it had with the men. They didn't feel stronger, smarter, or more capable. And for the first time in history, they felt a deepening sense of powerlessness in a world that was rapidly being reshaped in favor of the men. As the world's governments, almost entirely led by men, began to restructure economies and industries, some women started to raise their voices in protest. They questioned the alien women's true intentions and demanded more. The sense of inequality started to fester, as many women feared that the alien women's presence was a subtle method of shifting the balance of power permanently. But this wasn't just about gender, it was about something much deeper. The men, empowered by the aliens' gifts, began to see themselves as superior. They no longer merely ruled over governments and businesses. They began to dominate every aspect of society. Even the arts and sciences, once areas of creativity and collaboration, became places where men, with their enhanced intellect, set the tone. The women, once the creators and nurturers, now watched as their roles were slowly diminished in this new world order. One woman, a prominent leader named Lyra, who had once been an advocate for gender equality, stood before a large crowd, speaking passionately. "What have we become?" she asked, her voice echoing through the streets of a city now ruled by men. "What is this paradise, if it only benefits one half of humanity? Have we been forgotten? Or is this a plan to erase us from the future altogether?" Her words were met with murmurs of agreement, but also with fear. Many feared that speaking out would lead to dire consequences. But Lyra's courage sparked a wave of discontent. Small groups of women began to gather, talking about the changes they had seen. The divisions in society were growing wider. It was clear that this new world was not as harmonious as it seemed. Meanwhile, the men, who were now more than just powerful, they were near invincible, felt no need to question the gifts that had been given to them. To them, the world was finally in order. The old struggles of inequality, poverty, and disease were slipping away, replaced by a more efficient, more powerful world. They had become the architects of this new reality, and they intended to make it last. But it was during one of these quiet gatherings that Lyra, along with other like-minded women, began to notice something even more unsettling. The alien women, who had been so present during the early days, now seemed distant. They no longer interacted with the people. They no longer spoke to the masses. Their ships, once hovering protectively over cities, had begun to drift further away, almost as though they were waiting for something. It was then that the true realization hit. The alien women had given the men their gifts for a reason, not just to empower them, but to prepare them for something that no one, not even the men, could yet understand. Were the aliens grooming Earthsmen for something greater, or were they preparing them to be soldiers in a war for dominance? The answers were hidden in the silence that had followed their initial arrival. The alien women had chosen Earth, but for what purpose? The question began to spread. Had the alien women come to help Earth, or had they come to create a new, male-dominated, a world in which the women would no longer have a place? The world held its breath, waiting for the alien women's next move, wondering if this paradise for men was really just a prelude to something darker. The months passed. What had once been a world united by awe and wonder at the alien women's gifts had now become a world divided, fractured by the very blessings that were supposed to unite humanity. The air that had once felt thick with hope now hummed with an undercurrent of unease. The men, empowered by the alien technology, felt invincible, but their confidence was tinged with arrogance. They believed they had reached a new stage of human evolution, with the aliens' guidance turning them into something more than just men. They were leaders, rulers, and thinkers of a superior breed. But the women, though still part of the world they had once shared with men, felt like strangers in their own society. They had received the alien gifts in a different form indirectly, through the improvements to their environment and the promise of a more sustainable future. But there was no transformation, no empowerment. The alien technology had not made them stronger or smarter. The changes in the men were not just physical or mental, they were societal. And for the women, it felt like they were fading into the background, pushed aside by the rapid, relentless progress the men had achieved. The divide grew sharper when women started to realize something even more disturbing. Men weren't just becoming more powerful, they were becoming more distant, more detached from the women who had once been their partners, their equals. The alien technology, which had brought so much change to men, seemed to have subtly altered the dynamic between the sexes. Men now made decisions without consulting the women. They took charge in every realm of society, from politics to business, from education to the arts. The women who had once stood alongside them were now relegated to secondary roles, often excluded from the new circles of power. As the tension grew, some women began to form their own resistance. Small, secret groups of women gathered in the shadows, discussing what they could do to reclaim their place in the world. but their efforts were fragmented and scattered. The New World Order, with men at its helm, had been built on the power of the alien gifts. And the alien women were watching quietly, from the distance, in a secluded town. One woman named Iris stood before a gathering of women who, like her, had begun to question the new societal structure. "This cannot go on," Iris said, her voice trembling but determined. "You have to find out why we've been left behind. Why are the alien women allowing this to happen?" Her words sparked something in the room. Women from all walks of life, scientists, artists, businesswomen, homemakers listened, nodding in agreement. They, too, had begun to see the subtle shifts that had turned the world upside down. They had been sidelined in favor of the men, who now held the power to shape the future. "We were promised equality," one woman said angrily. "But instead, we've been pushed aside while the men get stronger. This wasn't supposed to be. The future? This isn't what we fought for." The resistance was small but growing, and it became clear that the divide in society was no longer just about gendered, it was about the alien women's true intentions. Had they come to Earth too? Elevate all of humanity? Or had they come to create a new order where men would be the dominant force? As the rebellion took shape, whispers began to spread. Some women began to suspect that the alien women weren't just giving men power, they were grooming them for something. It was as though the alien women were shaping the future of the planet, in their own image. But why? And why were the men so eager to accept it without question? The men, meanwhile, continued to thrive, their newfound abilities growing sharper and more focused. Some had developed telekinetic powers, moving objects with a simple thought. Others were capable of learning entire languages in days. They held conferences where only men were invited, discussing the future of Earth as if it were their sole domain. The world watched in disbelief as the balance of power shifted, more and more in their favor. But not all men were content with the new order. Among them were those who saw what was happening to the women, those who understood the inherent inequality now running through society. Some began to question the alien women's gifts, but their voices were drowned out by the overwhelming confidence of the newly empowered men. Then, in the dead of night, a lone alien ship, once a beacon of peace, appeared above a major city. Unlike the others, it was not the elegant, shimmering vessel that had first descended from the sky. This one was darker, more ominous. It hovered for a moment, casting a shadow over the world below, before it opened and released a single figure. This was not one of the peaceful alien women. They were different, their presence carrying an aura of dominance, of authority. The ship's arrival sent shockwaves through the world. Was this a sign that the aliens were changing their stance? Or was it something darker, a harbinger of what was to come? The men, already in positions of power, stood in awe, unsure of how to react. The women, however, knew instinctively that the arrival of this new figure would change everything. They were no longer just fighting for equality, they were fighting for their place in the world. For the future of Earth itself, the alien women had watched, observed, and shaped humanity, but now it was clear that they had something far more sinister planned. As the tension reached its peak, a question rang in the air. Would Earth remain a paradise for all? Or was this new world just the beginning of a much darker reality? The world had reached a tipping point. What had once seemed like a peaceful intervention by the alien women now appeared to be a carefully orchestrated plan. The changes they had brought to Earth, technological advancements, cures for diseases, and solutions to environmental degradation, had all been beneficial. But they were starting to feel like the gifts came with hidden strings attached. As men continued to grow stronger and more intelligent, the women of Earth, despite their contributions to society, found themselves increasingly sidelined. The world was divided, and the alien women's intentions were slowly coming into focus. Not in the way anyone had hoped. It began with small, unexplained incidents. Communities once united in their gratitude for the alien gifts started to notice odd patterns. Men seemed to thrive on the alien technology, but there were no similar advancements for women. While women received the same technological benefits, in terms of food, energy, and environmental healing, There was no sign of a transformation akin to what the men had experienced. No heightened intelligence, no increased physical prowess. Instead, they seemed to be left out of the more profound changes. The unease grew as men, now becoming almost superhuman, started making decisions that benefited themselves. Control of governments, corporations, and industries with unrelenting force. The world had become their playground, and it seemed like the women were no longer needed in the same way. Their roles, once essential and valued, had faded into the background as men ascended to positions of dominance. The alien women, watching silently from their ships above, offered no answers, leaving the world to wonder if this was truly the paradise they had promised. Among the growing whispers of discontent, there were those who had begun to piece together the puzzle. One of the leading voices of the rebellion, a woman named Leela, had spent countless nights studying the alien technology. She was a scientist, a thinker one, who had been at the forefront of humanity's progress before the alien women arrived. But now she was determined to uncover the truth behind the so-called gifts. Why were the men chosen? Lila asked aloud, her voice filled with a sense of betrayal. What was their purpose? Why did the alien women target only them? For such profound change, she delved deeper into the alien technology. Lila began to uncover something unsettling. There were hidden patterns within the data, codes that had been embedded in the technologies given to men. These weren't just technological marvels, they were part of a larger plan. The alien women hadn't just given the men power, they had been changing them physically and mentally, in preparation for something much darker. The men weren't just becoming more powerful, they were becoming more like the alien women. Their minds were being restructured, their bodies genetically altered in ways that would prepare them for an entirely new role in the universe. The alien women had no intention of creating equality, they had been grooming the men for something much more insidious. A takeover, not of Earth, but of the entire galaxy. Lila's discovery rocked her to the core. The alien women, it seemed, had been using Earth as a testing ground, a place to experiment with the effects of their technology on human males. The changes were deliberate, systematic. The men, transformed into something far beyond human, were becoming vessels for the aliens' greater purpose. Earth was to be their new colony. But it wasn't just about Earth. The alien women were preparing the men to help them conquer other planets, other civilizations. The men were being turned into soldiers, superior beings who could aid the alien women in their eventual expansion across the galaxy. The alien women had been playing the long game all along. The gifts they had given humanity were not acts of kindness. They were part of a larger strategy, one that would see the alien women and their male counterparts take control of not just Earth, but entire worlds. The men, so eager to embrace their newfound power, had no idea that they were being manipulated into becoming agents of a galactic empire. They thought they were liberating humanity, but in reality, they were unknowingly preparing the planet for invasion. Lila's revelation sent shockwaves through the resistance. The true purpose of the alien women was becoming clearer by the day. They had come to Earth not as saviors, but as conquerors in disguise. They had known that by empowering the men, they could ensure the success of their plan. The men would become the perfect leaders for their empire, and the women of Earth would be left behind, powerless, irrelevant in this new world. The question now was what to do with this knowledge. Lila, desperate to wake the world up to the truth, began spreading the word. But it was clear that the resistance alone wouldn't be enough. The alien women's hold over the men was too strong, their influence too deep. The men, now more powerful than ever, were blind to the true nature of the alien women's agenda. They saw themselves as the chosen ones, the rulers of a new Earth. Well, they weren't about to let go of their newfound power, the women of Earth. However, now had a choice. They could accept their fate, let the alien women carry out their plan, or they could fight back, rallying to reclaim their place in a world that had been stolen from them. As the resistance grew, one question lingered in the air. Could they stop the alien women before the transformation was complete? Or would they become nothing more than pawns in an intergalactic game? The tension in the air was palpable as the world teetered on the brink of something catastrophic. The alien women, once revered as peaceful saviors, had revealed their true intentions. The men of Earth, empowered and transformed by the alien gifts, now unknowingly served as pawns in a galactic scheme that would see the Earth not as a sanctuary, but as the first conquered world in a larger conquest. The women of Earth, who had once stood at the heart of humanity's progress, now found themselves fighting for survival not just as individuals, but as a species. The resistance, though small and scattered, was beginning to unite under a common cause. Led by Leela, the scientist who had uncovered the truth, women from every corner of the world began to speak out. The whispers of rebellion, once confined to quiet meetings in dark corners, now echoed in the streets. Women, young and old, from all walks of life, began to rise up not just against the men who had become more like the alien conquerors, but against the alien women themselves. Lila stood before a gathering of resistance leaders in a hidden underground facility, a former research lab that had once been a symbol of human ingenuity. Now it was a sanctuary for those who had learned the truth. "We've been deceived," she said, her voice firm, "but we have the power to fight back. The men believe they've been chosen, that they are the future. But they are being manipulated into becoming something they are not. We must show them the truth before it's too late." Her words struck a chord with those who had gathered. The resistance was no longer about simply reclaiming equality. It was about saving humanity from becoming an extension of the alien women's empire. It was about reclaiming control over their future. But the task before them was daunting. The men, now enhanced beyond human limitations, controlled the world's governments, industries, and military forces. They were practically invincible, and their loyalty to the alien women was unwavering. Even those few men who had started to question the alien women's motives were powerless against the overwhelming forces they faced. The women of Earth, however, still had one advantage. They had not been transformed in the same way. They had retained their humanity, their ability to feel and to empathize. The resistance began to spread across the globe, building alliances with the remaining pockets of unaffected men, those who still held a sense of morality, those who hadn't been completely consumed by the alien transformation. These men, though few, were willing to fight alongside the women for the survival of the human race. It wasn't just the men they had to worry about, though. The alien women were still a looming presence, watching from their ships above, monitoring every move the resistance made. They were silent, calculating, and their intentions remained unclear. What would they do when they realized that humanity wasn't going to quietly accept its place in their plan? The resistance knew it had to act fast. Lila and her team began working on a countermeasure, a way to break the alien women's influence over the men. Using the alien technology that had been left behind, they began to reverse engineer the devices that had enhanced the men. It wasn't easy, and time was running out. The alien women were becoming more aggressive in their efforts to maintain control over Earth. They knew that if the resistance succeeded, it would mean the end of their plans, not just for Earth, but for their entire conquest. One night, as the resistance prepared for their final assault on an alien-controlled facility, Lila received an unexpected message, an encrypted communication from one of the alien women. The message was simple, but its meaning was clear. You cannot stop what has already begun. Your resistance will fail, just as those before you have failed. It was a challenge, a declaration of war. The alien women were not just watching, they were actively preparing for the resistance's actions. The stage was set for an inevitable clash, one that would determine the future of Earth and perhaps the entire galaxy. As the resistance gathered for their final mission, Lila couldn't help but wonder, had they underestimated the alien women, or were they the key to breaking the hold the aliens had over Earth? One thing was certain: if they failed, the Earth would fall into the hands of the alien women. Humanity would be nothing more than pawns in a game. They had no hope of winning. But as the first explosions rocked the night and the battle began, a new sense of hope stirred in the hearts of the women and their allies. The fight for Earth had begun, and with it, the resistance had found something stronger than the alien women's gifts: the power of unity, of defiance, and of the unbreakable human spirit. The world was holding its breath. The final battle was upon them. The resistance, now united and stronger than ever, stood on the brink of either victory or total annihilation. The alien women, whose quiet manipulation had shaped the course of humanity's future, had underestimated the resilience of Earth's inhabitants. Their plan, once so meticulously executed, was now threatened by the very people they had sought to control. Leela, standing at the helm of the Resistance's command center, could feel the weight of the moment. Their forces were small, yet they were determined. The plan had been set into motion. They would strike at the heart of the alien women's power, their command ship. Hovering high above Earth's surface, it had remained there like an impenetrable fortress, watching, waiting, while the men below, transformed and emboldened, had led humanity into the alien women's trap. But tonight, everything would change. The final confrontation would be fought, not just with weapons and technology, but with something far more powerful: human willpower. The Resistance knew that they couldn't outmatch the alien women in terms of power, but they could outthink them, outmaneuver them, and most importantly, they could outlast them. The human spirit was a force the aliens had never fully understood, and now they would see its power firsthand as Leela and her team made their way to the launch bay. A sense of quiet determination washed over them. Their mission was clear: disable the alien command ship's systems, sever the connection between the alien women and the transformed men, and expose the truth of their manipulation to the world. They couldn't afford any mistakes. This was the one shot they had. Outside, the night sky was illuminated by the flickering lights of the alien ships, their metallic surfaces reflecting the dim glow of the cities below. The world had been slowly falling under the shadow of the alien presence for so long, and now, for the first time, there was a spark of hope, a glimmer of rebellion. The women who had once been sidelined had risen, and their allies, those few men who had retained their sense of morality, stood by their side. Together they would fight for the Earth that had once been their home. The Resistance launched there. Strike under the cover of darkness. The alien women's ships, still hovering above, scanned the skies, looking for any sign of intrusion. The tension in the air was palpable as the Resistance approached the heart of the alien fleet. The countdown began. Leela's hands shook slightly as she pressed the button to activate the device that would disable the command ship's systems. Every second felt like an eternity. The alien women's ships, once impenetrable, now seemed vulnerable, shaky, fragile. It was as though their power, which had once felt all-encompassing, was beginning to crumble. But the aliens were not unprepared. As Leela activated the device, the entire fleet reacted. An alarm blared, and the lights of the ships shifted from a calm glow to an aggressive red. The alien women's voices, once calm and soothing, now echoed across the Resistance's comms. Filled with authority, "You cannot win," one of them said, her voice cold and unyielding. "We're only delaying the inevitable. The future of Earth has already been decided." But Leela's team didn't falter. The device was working. The alien ships began to lose power, their hovering capabilities weakening. The men who had been unknowingly controlled by the alien influence began to stir, their enhanced minds finally freed from the mental grip that had held them captive for so long. The world's leaders, once so confident in their newfound power, now looked to the sky, confused and disoriented. The battle raged on as the Resistance stormed the command ship, their courage fueling them as they fought through the alien defenses. Every room they cleared, every alien they defeated brought them one step closer to the heart of the ship. Leela, heart pounding, led her team into the central control room. They had reached the core, but as they approached the control panel, a chilling realization struck. The alien women were not the only force at play here. The men those once transformed by the aliens' gifts were now regaining their autonomy, but not without consequences. Some had become too powerful, too aware of their capabilities. They turned, conflicted, their minds still wrestling with their loyalty to the alien women and their newfound sense of freedom. Leela faced one of the most powerful of these men, a leader who had once been her ally, his eyes now glowing with the same strange energy as the aliens, locked with hers. "You cannot stop this," he said, his voice a mix of determination and confusion. "We were meant for this. We were chosen." "You were chosen to be used," Lila replied, her voice unwavering. "The alien women never cared about you. They were just using you to create their empire. You're more than that. You're human." For a moment, it seemed like the man might turn against her. But then, something shifted in his eyes. The glow faded, and his humanity returned. He dropped his weapon, and for the first time since the alien women's arrival, the power of choice was restored to him. With that, the tide began to turn. The resistance pushed forward, disabling the final controls, cutting the connection between the men and the alien influence. The alien women, realizing their plans had been thwarted, made a last-ditch effort to take control, but it was too late. The truth had been revealed to the world. Resistance had succeeded. As the command ship's systems shut down, the world watched in awe. The men, once transformed into superior beings, now stood at a crossroads. They could reclaim their humanity, restore balance to the world, or continue down a path that would lead to domination and destruction. Leela looked out over the battlefield, knowing that this was only the beginning. The alien women had failed, but their influence was far-reaching. The Earth, though saved, would need to rebuild not just its cities, but its sense of unity and equality. The final battle had been won, but the war for Earth's soul was just beginning.